Yes.
We're good. You know that hope topic. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Grow Fearlessly webinar series. We are so lucky to have with us today David Moody from Moody Construction, and I can't tell you how excited I am to share with you and to learn myself some of his story. Just the process of getting on this webinar, Dave, is showing us a lesson in resilience and hope, which I know you're going to talk about.
And patience.
And patience. And patience.
Right. Yes.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us. April is our Small Business Success Month. And so our focus is on celebrating very successful entrepreneurs, but also allowing you to see a different side of these successful folks that you don't see when you see articles about their businesses in the paper, who the real people are behind these businesses and the challenges that they've faced, which are very similar to the challenges that all of us face. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to David Moody. Dave is the founder of Moody Construction, which is today one of the largest African-American owned construction companies in the entire country. And they've done projects that many of us have seen, experienced, and certainly heard of, including the International Concourse at the Atlanta Airport, the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is so phenomenal, and several others. So welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Glad to be here and looking forward to kind of sharing my journey of the last 30 years of starting a business and starting from scratch and wondering would I even make it.
Well, and we're going to go through that. So as we go through this conversation, if you have any questions, feel free to enter those in the chat window. We will certainly respond to those. And Suzanne, who's with us today, at the end of our conversation, will have us address those questions so Dave can address them in person. But why don't we start with Dave, go all the way back to, was it in the 1980s when you decided to start this company? What was really the impetus for starting it? Did you always know you wanted to own your own business? Did you see a need someone hadn't solved before? What caused you to make that leap?
Let's kind of say it actually started by accident. And what I mean by that, I was an architect with Bechtel Power Corporation, one of the largest engineering construction companies in the world. And my wife was working for the University of Michigan. We lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We had been married for about 10 months. And my parents lived 2 miles to the right. Her parents were 2 miles to the left. I said, you know what? This is a little bit too much. Let's move. So I said, let's go to Atlanta where I went to college. So we both left great jobs. The company that I came to work for was a small construction company. I told my in-laws, told my parents, my wife, this is going to be great. I got this. So we moved here August of 1983. By November of 1983, that company had went out of business. So I have now left a great job, moved, told my wife how great it was, and boom, I don't have a job. Longest drive home in my life to go 3 miles to go home. I think I took about an hour to get home. But from there, I started working for small companies for about 4 or 5 years. And finally, in 1988, we both decided we were so broke, might as well give it a shot. So it really was by accident how I went in business for myself.
So an accidental entrepreneur. But, you know, so many people would have gone through a similar situation and had this kind of awful day and not turned it into something positive. What was it about you or your circumstance that caused you to see an opportunity in what for most people might have frozen them?
Well, now I tell people you have to learn that sometimes what seems like your worst day is actually your best day. So during that time period, you know, we went from doing really well to struggling to make ends meet, wondering how we were going to make it. And at that time, I wasn't even thinking about, you know, starting a business. I was just hoping, man, I got to find a good job. And, you know, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. But I always tell people now, often what seems like your worst day in your life can sometimes become your best day in your life.
You know, it's funny. I used to always say that your greatest strength is your greatest weakness, but I've never heard it said the way you said it. And that's actually the same with my business. My worst day was when my manufacturing company, when I realized we were growing to death, and I was sitting in my car absolutely crying by myself. I dropped my child off at school. I had my head on the steering wheel and I was thinking, why did I not know this? And I was in tears. And somewhere in there, I took a deep breath and said, okay, what are we going to do about this? And you're right. My worst day actually became my best day because it's what made me create Now account.
And the other thing I think is important too, though. I had a very supportive wife. She wasn't giving me the blues like, how we going to make it? You promised me that this would be no problem and blah, blah, blah. She said, hey, we're in this together for better or worse, and we'll get through this. So that stress not being there really made a difference. And I often tell people who are married going into business, I said, please make sure your spouse is 100% behind what you're going to do, because you must have peace at home when you're struggling through those tough times. And that really makes a difference.
No question. And I absolutely agree. My husband has been sort of my rock through all my ups and downs. But I think you bring up another interesting point, which is sometimes people, when something bad happens, they get so embarrassed that they turn inward and they don't share that with, whether it's their spouse or even their extended family and other people who love and support them. And it's because we're afraid to share. But if we don't share, others can't help us overcome that or find the next opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have that very supportive, environment around you. People who are telling you, hey, you can get through this, you're going to make it, because you definitely start second guessing yourself many times through this process.
And third guessing.
It's funny. I've been in business 30 years, and there's still times even now I'm wondering, man, do I want to do this? Is this the right decision? And I think the other thing that's very important, people have to understand when you're an entrepreneur, there is an emotional cost to being an entrepreneur. You never get to turn off thinking about the business. Yeah, you might go on vacation, but you're always thinking about the business. And then the day you get your first employee, you become responsible. Your decisions, will determine if some people might send their kids to college, private school, or even have food on the table. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges I had to adjust to, was realizing I am now responsible for making sure people can provide. And that's an emotional price you do pay, being responsible. Everybody is free will to make their decisions, but when somebody decides they want to come work for you, and even though you might pay them and everything, they're hoping to build a career. Many people might only come work for you for a certain time, just as a launching pad, but you find people who do want to make a career, hopefully, and you have a responsibility to those folks. And it definitely is an emotional toll that can be put on you at times.
Right. But it says a lot about you as a leader that you view it that way, because a lot of people think that their employees just work for them, as opposed to you having a responsibility back to them. So that's probably one reason why you're as successful as you are. Now, one of the words you use a lot I find very interesting, and that's the word hope. It's
right.
Not a word you hear often in business. And I'm wondering what drove that? Did someone inspire you to make that word so important to your success?
Well, it's public knowledge that I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I didn't speak up until my late 50s, mid 50s publicly. But one of the things I learned going through that process and that journey in life was how important hope is. And what I mean by that, when you hope and feel that things will get better, things will turn around, you'll keep pushing yourself. But when a person doesn't have hope, it is hard to get them to see a reason to keep going. So one of the most important things I have learned in life is the importance of a person having hope. And I think part of being an entrepreneur, and just anybody, we have a responsibility to try and help others find a reason to have hope, because I think to be hopeless is a horrible place to be.
And when you think about those early years with your business, how did having hope get you through some of the tough times? Obviously, it got you through personal tough times. But is that something that's helped you really get your business through times when it might not have made it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you always hope it's going to get better, but it's kind of funny. When I started this business, I'd only been married 5 years. I was 31, almost 32 years old. I had two little kids, 3 and 2. So all of a sudden, I had a few employees. So you start realizing you can't quit, so that my hope was I could just persevere and get through it, to build a business. And it's amazing the things that will push you, such as children and employees, a spouse, and also the fear of failure. I didn't want to fail. I mean, it's amazing what fear also does. There's good fear and there's bad fear.
Right. Yeah,
so those things are helpful.
Oh, absolutely. So when you introduce the concept of fear, now you have to start to think about that resilience, right? So when you think about, your business has gone from being a small business to really a mid-size and even now a large business. How was it just in the early days when you had those days when you thought I might give up, or do you still have that today? And how do you address it differently as a startup than you do now as, a growing sustainable business?
Today is April 19th at 2:18. So I probably had that fear April 19th at 11 o'clock. Because, as you age, you get different fears that come along. Now I'm at that stage, I'll be 62 in May. And now you have the fear, I don't want to mess up what I've done to make sure my wife and I can go into retirement one day. When I say retirement, just be able to take care of ourselves as we age. So when I first started, I was hoping we could just make ends meet. Then I call it that middle period. You're trying to figure out, wow, where am I headed? But the other thing that's important, in 1992 is when I started dealing with being a childhood sexual abuse survivor. I started having panic attacks. I had a complete nervous breakdown, but I could not stop working. So my wife, who's a registered nurse, would basically patch me together, and I would go to meetings and presentations. And that's when my faith also grew even more, because it was only through the grace of God that I'm even where I am today, because I was a broken man in 1992. And to try and be building a business that was only 4 years old, 2 little kids, trying to deal with the impact of sexual abuse, having panic attacks, a complete nervous breakdown, but I could not stop. So I was not able to I was finally getting therapy when we figured out putting 2 and 2 together, because when it first started happening, I didn't see how something that happened 26 years ago could be impacting me today. So we didn't put 2 and 2 together, because people in 1992 weren't even talking about sexual abuse from childhood, how it impacts you as adults. So I went and had all kind of medical tests. I knew something was wrong. I thought I had a brain tumor or something. And during this process, my wife's mother's dying of a brain tumor. So we're all over the place trying to even corral this. So that is when you find out what you're truly made of. And what I also came away with, we are much stronger than we realize that we are. Because realistically, when I look back, I have no idea how I made it through that, other than the grace of God and my wife, Carla, and my own internal drive. I didn't want to, because I'm a happy person by nature, and I did not want what happened to me as a child to control my life forever. And then once I figured out what the panic attacks were coming from and started building my strength back, I basically kind of put it to the side again and said, hey, we're going to push through it. But I didn't tell anybody what had caused it. It was 2013 before I ever publicly said what happened to me 21 years later. So it was still that stigma that you do not want to disclose that. And I also speak up because a lot of people in business or just in life deal with mental health, such as panic attack, anxiety. And I want people to know they're not alone. You can have an incredible life. You can still build a good business, but it takes a toll. You have to really work through it. So none of it's been easy. It's been a real, chore, but it's been great. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Right. And you've recently written a book, which I ordered today. I can't wait to meet you.
Thank you.
I can't wait to read it, where you actually share this story, right? So you want to tell us about the courage it took to write the book and how you did that on top of running a business and having a family?
Well, in 2015, I'm fortunate enough I have 2 adult children now, so we don't have children to take care of. And so in 2015, my wife and I moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts. I went to Harvard for Advanced Leadership Initiative program. It's for leaders, CEOs, business people who want to make a difference in the world. So we actually lived in Cambridge for a semester. Of course, we went when they had the worst snowstorm they've had in 100 years, but we didn't take a car and we walked everywhere, took the train. But it was in that program that I realized one person can make a difference. And I also realized what I was doing to help childhood sexual abuse survivors was greatly needed. And I'm not a person who even likes reading that much, but I got with my old roommate, Charles Cherry, who's a writer and in the media business. And we sat down, because I have a blog site called moodyspeaks.com. And we basically took that and turned it into a book, and the book's going very well, and people are very happy. And It's on Amazon, it's on Kindle, and it's called Fighting Through the Fear, My Journey of Healing from Childhood Sexual Abuse. But it's also a business book, because I talk about what it was like building a business and what it was also like healing while trying to build a business.
Right. So I'm curious, when I was growing up, people would always tell me you have to do what you're passionate about. And I always struggled with that. I think because I was always worried I didn't know what I was passionate about, because I like a lot of things.
Right.
And then I realized one day that I actually don't think you have to be passionate about what you do. I think you have to be passionate about the so what that you do. So I'm curious, when you got into construction, is it because you were passionate about buildings, or is it a so what? Because you seem very interested and passionate about people.
Well, actually, since I was about 9 and 10 years old, I've always played with Lego building blocks. The older guys in my neighborhood were taking drafting classes. So I'm doing what I dreamed of doing. Only I thought I was going to probably be more in the architectural field. I do have a degree in architecture. I worked as an architect for Bechtel. But what happened, I took a field assignment at Bechtel, building nuclear power plants. And I fell in love with the dirt, the action, and the hard hat. And back when I was in architecture, we actually had to draw. We didn't use computers. And I realized I liked the outdoors, the noise, the action. And I realized I would be a much better builder than I was an architect. So I took my architectural knowledge and took it into construction. So I think that's also important in life. You can be passionate about something, but you also got to know what you can be good at.
Right.
So I'm still in the same field. It's just I now build people's dreams instead of I thought I would design people's dreams. I just build them.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. As you were growing the business, what was the one thing that kept you up at night? Was it getting the next project? Was it finding the right employees? Was it, waiting to get paid? What is it that caused the most stress in your business?
You hit all 3 of them.
Okay. 3 for 3.
Yeah, we're in a business, you eat what you kill. We don't have recurring income. That means once we finish a project, we got to go find another one. So I'm always concerned about the next project. You're always concerned about finding good people. You're also concerned about losing good people, because people will come get your folks, and you do the best you can. And, you do worry about financing at times, but it's more now is like, I don't want to make any mistakes that ruins what we've built. And my wife and I have really struggled to get to where we are. But I say the thing that keeps me up the most now is what's next, next projects. But I remember in the early years, I was staying and worrying about how would we finance, making it. Can I find good people? Where's the next work? Will this last? Will I fail? I remember jogging at 4:30 in the morning one time, and that's when I went, okay, Dave, we got to figure out another plan. you don't need to be running in the streets at 4:30 in the morning. But I couldn't sleep. I spent many a nights pacing and worrying that my wife doesn't even know about, because I had a young family and I couldn't fail.
Right, right.
And my wife went back to nurse, became a registered nurse to make sure that we had income if needed.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I think a lot of people often ask me, how do you balance sort of work and family? And like you, I'm lucky in that my spouse has a very stable job. And I think having that balance of one person being very stable and the other being very flexible, I'm not sure how we would do it otherwise. We'd have to outsource our children or something.
Well,
it sounds like you've had similar with your wife with nursing, having a bit of stability while you were building this company.
Oh, it brought comfort, but you got to remember, my wife went to nursing school while we were starting this company.
Oh, wow.
And so there was a time where my daughter, I was braiding her hair, getting them ready. So we had to work as a team.
Sure.
She became a registered nurse and worked in hospice. But I'll tell you, there was a period in there where we were all like, what did we get into? You know, so it's, you know, it's always funny. People see you now and go, man, your life is great. But I always tell people, you don't know the backstory. You don't know where people are, what they've gone through.
Right.
And all of us have a story to tell.
Well, we do. We all have a story to tell. And a lot of people think that you're successful despite the challenges you've been through. And I think in many cases, people are successful because of the challenges they've been through, because you've built up a strength, a mental strength and a spiritual strength.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, I'm much tougher from what I've gone through, but I also feel a responsibility to share my journey, because there are so many people who are suffering in silence for many reasons. And I believe it's important for them to see they're not alone. I think that's the biggest blessing I try to bring to folks, is that you're not alone and you don't have to suffer in silence. Right.
And I have one last question, then we're going to open it up for questions from other folks.
Sure.
You know, you talked a lot about the different things that kept you up at night, and a lot of it's around making decisions. Did I make the right decision? Am I going to make a mistake? Am I going to, you know, fail at something? A lot of people say that as you gain experience in your career, you develop that gut, that sixth sense. Did you develop that over time? How do you make decisions differently today, now that you're running a large company, than maybe you did when you were starting?
I think one of the most important things you just said, you have to trust your gut. The few times I've gone and made bad mistakes, I didn't trust my gut.
Right.
And the other thing is, I run pretty much everything by my wife if it's something that I really need, or I have other people that I trust. Sure. that I really talk to. One thing, I don't make any decisions in the vacuum without running it by some folks, unless it's just one of those moments you got to make the call. Right. But the other thing that you have to understand as an entrepreneur, everything does stop with you. You're responsible for everything at the end of the day, and you have to be willing to take that responsibility.
Right. That's a great point. So before we open it up for questions, we have a slide up with your top success tips. So we have 4 of them. And do you want to walk us? We've touched on a number of these, but I'd love for you to just share those with everyone.
Sure. Have hope, and you grow hope. First of all, if you're going to go into business or just through life, you've got to have a reason to keep living. You got to keep feeling that things will get better. Even though we can be really broken or beat down sometimes, I always know today is something's going to get better. And I use nature and the sun and wildlife for my kind of, when I'm having a bad moment or feeling like, man, is it going to get better? I tend to always look outside or go outside regardless of the temperature and just feel that air. And I know it's going to be okay, because the sun's going to come up again tomorrow. Don't be afraid, be aware, never stop. What I mean by that is fear, especially imaginary fear, that is the greatest paralyzing thing that exists. We can stop before we even try, because that fear, that trickster part of the brain that says you're not going to make it, why are you going to try? And you can just freeze. And that imaginary fear is incredible, and you have to fight through that fear. So be aware, but don't let fear stop you. Focus on what will serve you best. That is focus on what you know you'll be good doing. Like I like singing, but I know I couldn't have made a living singing. I could have spent my whole life trying to break in as a Broadway star. That was my dream, was to sing on Broadway when I was in high school. I always dreamed of that, but I knew I wasn't going to make that. So to me, you got to know what you do best, that you can serve mankind and also build a good career. And the last thing, remember, you're never alone. What I mean by that, there's always somebody there for you. There are always people there who will help you. I've had people support me, give me words of encouragement that I didn't expect that at all. And we're never alone. There are people always watching who care about us that we don't even realize about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love the last two kind of resonate with me. It was interesting. I had a children's product company that I was really passionate about. And when I was finding myself growing to death because my customers were taking forever to pay, I tried to solve that by creating Now account, but I was really still focused on my children's product company, and I was trying to solve my own problem. And somebody said to me, you don't realize that the solution you've created helps so many other businesses. So I think, like you, I had to realize that my role was to help other businesses not have to face the challenge I had faced, as opposed to staying really focused on, this children's product company. And today I couldn't be more passionate about helping other small businesses. So other people around you do kind of help guide you when maybe you've got the blinders on, like I did.
And I commend you for what you're doing. I commend you for going for it. And I'm glad to see what you're doing, because it's needed in the entrepreneur world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I commend you. I'm amazed at what you've accomplished. And living in Atlanta, I'm lucky enough to get to experience some of the amazing buildings and experiences that you've created, because they're more than buildings. I mean, they are such a part of Atlanta's culture. So it's exciting for me to meet the man behind these buildings that I've experienced. So what we're going to do now is open it up to questions, and Suzanne will read out some of the questions. I can see lots of them. She's scrolling through. If we don't get to someone's question, we will still make sure and capture that question and send them an answer. But
yeah, great. Our first question is from LaWanda Hall, and she asks, what were your triggers for the panic attacks?
So I don't know if you heard that. What were your triggers for the panic attacks?
And that is a great question, because one of the things I tell people, you must understand your triggers. My triggers at that time was, I had never said I had been sexually abused before as a child. So saying that to my wife and releasing that was like a pressure cooker.
Wow.
And it was like 26 years of a secret I was hiding. When I finally released it, my body reacted. But the triggers for panic attacks for me was if I felt someone was trying to take advantage of me or someone close to me. And through therapy, I learned my triggers. Or if I don't eat right, or, like I work out constantly because I realize how those things are important. So over the years, I've learned my triggers. And everybody, if you deal with anxiety or panic attacks, you have to learn and pay attention to realize what your triggers are. And once you learn your triggers, you're able to deal with it much better, because that's what it is. Relax, breathe, or whatever your thing is, and you get through it. And whoever asks that question, if you're dealing with panic attacks, you're going to be okay. It's going to be all right.
Okay, Ms. Hall has a follow-on question too. She asks, how helpful was your psychology degree in assisting you to navigate the psychosocial and emotional challenges associated with being sexually abused?
I'm not sure my psychology degree helped me at all, because at that time you are panicking, because I had no idea. But what I will say, my psychology degree was helpful because I wasn't afraid to go get therapy. I knew the importance of therapy, because so many of us avoid therapy because we feel that means I'm crazy. And that's unfair to yourself. Therapy is great for many reasons. But my psychology degree helped me realize there is a reason, study, understand, but more importantly, it helped me realize that I could get through this and still have an incredible life. It wasn't the end of all because of what I was dealing with. I had to figure it out through therapy, how to manage it. And, you know, life's going on, and I'm very thankful and happy.
Well,
great. And then Sandra Duval, who is one of our Now account clients, and she's interested in doing some business with your company. And she has some pretty specific questions I think might be better handled offline. But she did also point out that she met you at she's in Arizona. She met you at an ADOT Expo in Tucson recently. So
I think she might have me mixed up because I've never been to Tucson. But get the questions to me and I'll get her answers.
Okay, will do. And that's it. No more questions right now.
All right. Well, if wait, we got another one.
More. Yeah. Jeff Anderson just wrote in. He says, you mentioned that the struggle time in building your business with a young family and young business. His question was, what was the moment that you felt it was going to be okay while still dealing with the personal struggle?
Let's see. Actually, you know, there were different stages. Deep down in my heart, I know this might sound strange, I always knew it was going to be okay. It was just the pain or the discomfort I had to go through to get there. But I never felt in my heart it wasn't going to be okay. But when you're going through it, it's hard for yourself to truly believe it right in front of you. But I'm going to say it was probably about 10 to 12 years in that I really said, you know what, I think this is going to make it.
Cool. And then a follow-on question from Brian Walker, who asks, what was your biggest challenge during the beginning stages of your company, and how were you able to overcome them?
Well, if you read, there's a story I talk about, a famous basketball player was going to be my partner. Read moodyspeaks.com and read that story, because I turned them down. But the biggest challenge, I think, in the beginning was really believing this was going to work. Always being worried about the next job. One of the things I learned from some mentors, if we made some money, I saved it. So one of the biggest things I can tell folks is save your money and don't be afraid to live very tight. My wife and I turned off cable TV. We didn't eat out. I mean, we cut everything. And I even remember going to the mortgage company and folks and telling them what was going on, and they worked a deal. And the other thing I tell people, when you do that, any deals you make with your credit card company or mortgage company, anybody, keep your word. We kept our payment terms with everybody, and everybody worked with us, and it worked great. But you got to be, I think the key thing is also in the beginning is to live beneath your means. You have to.
And be honest. I mean, your point about living up to what you say you're going to do, that's everything. Right. That's why people work with you. It's why you get access to capital. So don't guess, right? Live within your means, live below your means, and always exceed what you say you're going to do.
Right. And you got to deliver a great product, especially in the beginning. I mean, all the time you do, but in the beginning, people got to know if there's a glitch or something, you're going to fix it or be there. You're not going to leave them hanging. And it's so important that people realize you're a person of your word, and your word is good. And you're a good person. And what I mean by that, you're a good person to work with. You're easy to be around, not a difficult person, because that in the beginning in business can really kill you.
Sure. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you so much for being with us. I know you said now you're worried about what's next, but I, for one, can't wait to see what's next, because based on what you've already done, next is going to be phenomenal.
I'm working on some things, and I'm really into adventures. Like I did the Grand Canyon last year for a week, where I did a rafting hiking trip in the Grand Canyon, and I slept for 7 nights without a tent on a cot next to the river. And it was the most exhilarating and life-changing trip because for 7 days and 7 nights, I had no negative noise. It was unbelievable. And no cell phone and no internet.
And I bet the sky was unlike anything you've ever seen.
It was just like how it says in the Bible. When there's no city lights to wash out the stars, it was unbelievable how bright and how many stars it was. Wow. In fact, when the moon came over the mountain, we didn't even have to wear our headlight to walk around at night. That's how bright it was when the moon came up.
I mean, I know we're finishing here, but I love that you bring up the importance of slowing down in silence, because our world is so busy and there's so much clarity of thought about yourself too, when you just slow down.
And I tell people all the time, for me, it's taking long hikes, getting out in nature. But you got to remember, when I was going through panic attacks and stuff, I did not want to be alone. I was afraid to be alone. Now I enjoy taking hikes alone for a couple of hours just to kind of push myself through that. But more importantly, just to get in touch and really see what I'm feeling, what I'm hearing. And I'm a believer that you got to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again. For those of you that joined us, hope you enjoy it. We've recorded the session, so we'll be sending that out shortly so you can watch it again or hopefully share it with your friends, because it is rare that you get to see insights or hear insights from someone like David Moody. For sure, check out his blog, because I, for one, can't wait to see some of the stories that are out there. And certainly also check out his book. I ordered mine today off Amazon. It was simple click. And if you'll join us next week, we've got another exciting webinar with Tamara Francois of XP Agency. And she's going to talk specifically about how to grow your business without breaking your company. She has also scaled her company to a point where she now works with companies like Coca-Cola, et cetera. So we're going to hear her story as well. And with that, we're going to say goodbye. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Make sure to keep up hope. Make sure to keep going and don't stop. And of course, take some time, as Dave said, to know yourself better and have some quiet time and be by yourself. Thanks, Dave.
Yes. Thanks for having me. And I'm really commend you for what you're doing, and great luck and work with your business, and may it just grow bigger than you ever dreamed of.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.